Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm gonna do this video without my glasses on. I hope like this does not turn out looking crazy, but I figure because technically like I can't see far away, not close up, like this camera should work because I just feel like when I have my glasses on, it's like this glare. But anyway, my name is Michelle. I'm 50. I just turned 50 a couple months ago, so I'm probably going to say that like for the next year in every single video. If you've been paying attention to my real estate series, you know that I'm focused right now on my rent by the room journey. And so I wanted to get on and share like my current, like, I guess, feedback on the pros and cons of rent by the room. I have this thing here. I was trying to be like really creative. How cute is this? So what I did was I got a frame from Dollar Tree and then I put contact paper on it because I am just a tad OCD. And I found that when I use those little dry erase things, they leave like those black lines and it was just bothering me. So I found that if you get a picture frame and you just put like contact paper, in it, then you can write on it with a dry erase marker. And that way it erases off beautifully. And if some of you are like, why do you have this binder clip at the top? Because I have like a little makeshift office in my apartment. And so I have a little push pin on the wall and then that hangs from it. And then I can like take it on, take it off. But that's just one of those little teacher hacks I've learned over the years. So anyway, let me get into the pros and cons of rent by the room. So I have 3 pros and 3 cons. So the first pro, so I wrote my little things down, that's why I have it. The first pro is all your money is not tied to one person. So if you've seen some of my other videos, you'll see that like I've been doing Section 8 with this house. It was my grandmother's house. So I had been doing Section 8 for like 16 years with the house. And this never started off as anything remotely connected to like, this is going to be a business or real estate is getting ready to be my vehicle to help me retire early. However, I want to say 2 years ago, I started an LLC and I was like, hey, you know what? I could probably grow this little real estate thing as more so as an extra income. It's only in the last, I would say, year that I've really been like, wait a minute, like I could grow this and this could replace my teaching income, especially since I work part-time and, eventually it could actually, exceed my teaching income. So now, my focus is a little different. So I'm definitely using real estate as a vehicle to retire early. So I say that because originally I was being very nostalgic, like it was my grandmother's house. She had recently been put into a nursing home. I was a friend of a friend who had started getting into real estate. So I really was just keeping the house as a, just for nostalgia's sake. So fast forward to, last year or rewind to last year. And I had a tenant, Section 8 tenant. That was my first time like being my own property manager. Prior to that, the friend of the friend had managed it. But since I was working part-time, I started the LLC. I was like, I could do this. I rented a house to her and she was Section 8 and her kids tested positive for lead. Well, she was like, oh, well, they had that before we moved in. Well, the housing authority and the, what would that be called? Like, I guess the health department, they still are going to test your house. And because this house is like almost 100 years old, of course there was lead paint. So then I spent thousands of dollars trying to correct this issue. Well, at that time though, I had credit cards that had like $10, $15, $20,000 limits. I had a line of credit with like a $20,000 limit. And so, I'm trying to correct this problem because now she's not in the house because the house is considered inhabitable. Hopefully I said that right. So I spent, okay, this is 2024. Okay, so that was 2022. So for 2022, that house sat empty for 8 months because I'm trying to correct this problem. Because what would happen is when the health department would come out, they would be like, oh, sorry, we still are testing positive for a little lead dust in this particular area of the house. So it was just like, oh my gosh. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? My credit is now ruined because all this money that I've borrowed, it's due. I don't have anybody in the house. I work part-time, so I don't make enough money to cover this, which is like in the past when I worked full-time, I could always balance it because I could just like decrease my lifestyle and then, tend to the rental. So I started watching the Rent by the Room stuff. And so what drew me to it was my very first pro, which is all your money is not connected to one person. So that way, as long as you have at least one of the rooms rented, you're getting something, which means something is better than nothing, because that's less money that you have to pull from your savings or figure out where you're coming up from. So the first pro is that all your money is not connected to one person. So that's wonderful. The second pro, I knew you was going to come up here. You cannot be up here, my love. No, you can't be up here. So the second pro is that if you're a beginner landlord, kind of like I am, I really recommend it because it helps you manage multiple tenants at one time, but under a single family umbrella. And so the reason why this is helpful is because normally, if you're a landlord and you have multiple properties with multiple tenants, things can snowball and go wrong at the same time and you feel like overwhelmed. Whereas if you're managing one property with multiple tenants, that means your maintenance issues, they're still contained to the one property. So if someone calls about a toilet, there's only one toilet in the house. So you're not going to have everybody having different issues. They're all going to have the same issues as it comes to the house. So that way it kind of helps you learn how to manage your tenants under the umbrella of a single family house. So that means you learn and you establish some processes for moving in, moving out, posting listings, it's almost like the training wheels of being a landlord if you want multiple properties, because you can kind of test out different systems and processes in this one setting. And then of course, if you do them right, then they can translate to, single family homes or duplexes and, things like that. So that's the second one, is that it really helps you learn how to kind of get your processes together when it comes to managing multiple people. Third, it helps you get better at your screening process of tenants and you're not making moves out of desperation. So when I rented in 2021 to my tenant, I was just trying to get somebody in that house because the house, had been empty and I was like, I need somebody in here. So I didn't even really have a screening process. I just knew the person was Section 8 and I was like, perfect. I know that I don't have to worry about getting my money, but I didn't go through any sort of process of how am I going to screen these people? Which now, because I've done the Rent by the Room, I have very clear processes on who I rent to. So it's made me way more comfortable as a landlord when it comes to tenant screenings. And why that's important is that way you're not making decisions because you're desperate. You're not like, oh my God, I gotta get somebody in that house because I'm bleeding money. And I think it really helps because then you can take your time when you're picking people, because all your money isn't connected to that one person showing up or being okay, because you have other people in the house. In my case, because it's a 3-bedroom, as long as one room is rented, then at least I know I can cover the mortgage on that house, which is only $350. As long as 2 rooms are rented, I can cover the utilities. 3 rooms are rented, then we doing it. So I think that's the third reason, is that it helps you become a better screener of tenants and you're not making moves out of desperation. So now for the cons, because there's always some cons to some stuff. So the first con is that your profits are dependent on where the house is located. So when I was watching all these videos and people were like, oh my goodness, I can make, 2 or 3 times what I would make if I was renting this to a single family. Well, that's not my experience. First, because the house is in a area that is not pulling in high rents. So you have to keep it comparable to the neighborhood. The second thing is it's in a city where the cost of living isn't that high. So, if, this house was in LA somewhere, or in Seattle, or even DC, like somewhere, New York, like somewhere where like the rents are high. And then you have like people who, you know, they're working professionals and they're trying to save some money. And, you know, you could rent out a room for $1,000 a piece, and that would still be better than, you know, the area rents for like a single apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment or a studio, but that's not the case for me. So really, I would make more money if I took the house back to Section 8. Like right now, on a good month, if all the rooms are rented, I might make 200, 300, 400 max profit. And that's really in the summertime, because in the winter, when you're dealing with like heat and stuff, you know, the bills go up. So first, your profit margins are really dependent on the area. The second con is turnover. So, excuse me. So the second con is turnover. So, you know, if you're doing year leases for a single family, then you're only having to possibly have a turnover every 12 months. Whereas when you're doing rent by the room, I start my leases off with everybody gets a 3-month one. So once you get the 3-month one, then it can move on to like a 6 or a 9-month, but it's definitely more turnover. So then that means that's just more work. And, you know, you're having to post listings more often. You may have rooms sit empty. So just the turnover, which means it's way more work managing a rent by the room. It's not quite as simple as like when you rent to a single family, meaning you're not doing tenant screenings year round, or, you know, you're doing it one time. You only have to deal with those people if like maybe there's a rent issue or there's a maintenance issue, but it's not quite as hands-on. So when you're doing rent by the room, it's definitely very hands-on. It's not quite as hands-on as if you were doing short-term rentals like an Airbnb, but it's still pretty involved. And then the third reason why I will never do rent by the room again is because I feel like Mrs. Garrett on The Facts of Life. Now, I know that is showing my age, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me tell you. It was a show, I think it was out like in the 80s, and Mrs. Garrett was like the den mother at a boarding school for girls. So she was constantly putting out fires because of the, you know, different interactions with the girls. That's how I feel right now. I feel like I'm like Mrs. Garrett, because the putting random people together is like a crapshoot. So you don't know. They might all get along, they might not. And so I'm glad that I'm having this kind of negative experience kind of a year into this, because had this happened earlier, I wouldn't have even done it this long. So the first round of people, they were okay. The one lady who's kind of having issues, I knew she could potentially be an issue when she was going to move in, because she was asking me, hey, can I bring my furniture? And I was like, no, you cannot. Like, the house is decorated intentionally. If you want to store your furniture in the basement, knock yourself out. So I already knew like she might be an issue. But I guess the personalities of the other people were okay. Well, fast forward to now, because it is a mess. So now I have 3 people in the house. It's 2 ladies, like they're in their 40s and 50s. And then if you watch my last video, you see that I just rented to a young guy who's like, he's probably like in his 30s. So part of the problem was how I handled the issue. So when I realized that the 2 ladies were not going to be besties, I should have stayed out of some of the smaller issues, and I didn't. I kind of got involved with that part. And so now it's snowballing, and there's like things that like they're asking me to get involved in, which in theory, because they're adults, they really could work it out themselves. So like, for instance, one of the current issues is, I guess the one lady was supplying the toilet paper and paper towels and stuff. And if you see one of my other videos, you'll notice I mentioned I have no idea how the tenants were doing that, because I only supplied like the first month. And so evidently that lady has now decided she's not supplying that anymore. And she put like a little Post-it note somewhere. Well, then the other lady tenant takes a picture of the Post-it and sends it to me. Well, I don't even respond to that, because I'm like, I'm not getting into that. Okay. If the lady doesn't want to supply the toilet paper and stuff, hey, buy your own. Well, where now I've had to intervene is that because it's only one bathroom, the lady who, put the post-it note up, who, like I said, when she first moved in, I knew if anybody was going to be an issue, it was her. That's the one who, a couple weeks ago when I had a conversation with her, she was very aggressive and unprofessional with me. So fast forward to, a few days ago, she she uses the bathroom. She leaves the bathroom. The other lady goes in. Why is there feces on the seat? Like literal shit on the toilet seat. Like, come on now. So that lady goes, she knocks on the other lady's door. The lady doesn't answer. So now who gets stuck cleaning the poop off the seat? This lady. So of course she's livid. She's pissed. So now I'm like, okay, I got to intervene. So because this one lady has had issues, over the last 2 months, it's just been increasing. And I feel like it's her. Like, while yes, she's definitely not besties with this new lady, I don't feel like it's the new lady. I do feel like this woman is being aggressive and just combative and making it very, very hard to live with. I don't think she's a bad person, but I think she's probably somebody who probably shouldn't do a rent by the room, and maybe should do more of like a studio type thing. Because she does have kind of some ways that she would like things done. And there is nothing wrong with that, but that's not conducive to if you're in a rent by the room. And luckily in my lease, I anticipated, issues. So, my lease includes like rules and regulations, which go over, expectations as far as how disputes are handled among tenants, the expectations of how you treat each other and, stuff like that. So I ended up having to send that tenant a 30-day vacate notice because I feel like, it was one thing when she was acting aggressive and things like that, but now we're getting into hygiene issues and that's not fair. And thank God it's in the lease under my good cause clause, which touches on hygiene and, personal property. And so, that's not fair. Like, you can't live in a house where somebody's going to leave poop on the seat and then you ask them to clean it up and they're ignoring you. They don't answer the door. It's a mess. So I did mail that out to her and I did it in 3 different ways. I had to look it up for my state. So I'm so glad that, I have that now and hopefully I won't have to use it again. But what I did was I mailed it to her. I did regular mail, certified mail, plus I mailed it to someone on my team and he's going to go tape it to the door and take a picture and I'll have that for the timestamp. And hopefully this will not get to the eviction stage and that she will actually leave in 30 days. What I did was I extended it though to the end of January, just so that, I just feel like it's easier for her and for me. That way I'm not trying to prorate stuff. And, you have a little over 30 days to try to find a place to go. So yeah. And it's so funny because when I was listing out like my topics for this real estate series, I was like, oh, I really want to end with a story time, but I don't know. Am I going to have a story time every week? Clearly it's working out that I'm having a story time every week. So hopefully you found this helpful, insightful. If you're considering rent by the room, there's definitely some pros and cons. And I would say the biggest one is because this is a business and you're getting into it to make money and profit margins. If you're not in an area or a city that really has high rents, this may not be worth your time, because once you start factoring in like what you're actually covering, because it is a rent by the room, like utilities, I provide free Wi-Fi, monthly cleaning service, it may just eat into your profits and it may not be worth it because it is a crapshoot with the people living together and you may get sucked in to, kind of handling disputes among tenants. So as always, be grateful and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.